For the last 4 to 5 years that Diablo 3 has existed, there has been something gnawing away at me. It's a very specific type of disappointment, a kind that has been masked by the overall polish that Diablo 3 presented to us initially. With all of the beautiful cinematics, colorful spells, and riveting fast-paced gameplay, it felt good to play Diablo 3. But the more I dug into that game, the more it felt gutted. It turned out that the game was a hollow shell of its predecessor. It was missing the soul of what made the Diablo series great. You see, there's a difference between expanding and improving on a previous entry in a series, and completely overhauling the philosophy behind the series itself. And it certainly feels like that's what happened. I've been really scared of making this video for a long time because there's just so much to talk about. And I'm not really sure if I'm qualified to make any grand statements on why Diablo 3 failed to live up to its name. But I will take the plunge, and who knows, this may even end up being a 2 or 3 part series. It's up to how much viewer engagement this video brings in. Where to begin? Well, what better place to start than the beginning of each game themselves? In Diablo 2, you immediately start in the middle of an encampment, a rogue encampment of a runaway sisterhood that have all fled their sanctuary to survive. At first glance, the camp isn't too dark visually. However, the music that accompanies the encampment and the lonely, vast wilderness seems to build most of the suspense for you. Act 1's desolate melody, joined by the steady beat of drums, just does so much work on its own. It's truly hard to ignore. The game establishes the dark tone Diablo is known for very quickly without shoving it in your face. Something else that needs to be mentioned is the random map generator in Diablo 2 is much stronger than its successor. So naturally, every playthrough from the very start in Diablo 2 is fresh and intense. On the flip side, Diablo 3 start at first glance seems dark visually. However, it ends up feeling very forced and rushed. You find yourself walking down a dirt path as relatively harmless zombies lurch forward. Then you come upon your first scripted event, and this is a huge repetitious problem. I'll come back to this. A nearby town has guards stationed outside its gate in order to defend the town from the undead. After a brief conversation, you just so happen to be there when a wave of zombies comes crashing in. You help dispose of them and then thereafter are let into the town. A town named New Tristram. Now, for most of you who are watching this video, we all know Tristram, the infamous village that was cursed by the Dark One himself, torn apart and left to pieces. We all experienced this ourselves in our playthrough of Diablo 1, and we saw what little of it remained in Diablo 2. Its dark and sinister legacy is something that should have been left alone, not brought back in the form of nostalgia. It's a cheap way of trying to stir our old feelings. Now, I'm not going to get too much into Diablo 1 versus 2, but Diablo 1 had a consistent theme throughout its story and gameplay: absolute dread. Even as you returned to town, the looming presence of the church, catacombs, caves, and hell was there. Tristram itself was not an escape. The song, the villagers, the entire dreadful atmosphere of that town truly felt forsaken. So why would anyone in their right mind, after all the stories, legends, and rumors of Tristram, would you name a new town after Tristram? A cursed town that was burned down by the devil himself, evil incarnate. There aren't even any returning villagers, and even if there were, they'd tell you not to name it after Tristram. Nonetheless, we all know how it got its name. The developers of Diablo 3 were trying to reap the rewards of nostalgia, when they should have just been trying to build the game from the ground up. This, in my opinion, shows what kind of team developed Diablo 3. Anyways, continuing from this point forward, after some more scripted events, you come to understand the town very quickly. It's actually a safe haven, unlike the old Tristram. Sure, New Tristram has its problems, but it's not nearly as desolate and hopeless as the first 2 towns that you encounter in Diablo 1 and 2. Diablo 3's immediate static maps and scripting ultimately shut down any sense of exploration and adventure. This, to me, was another huge blunder. Yes, there were many conversations and stories to be had in the original 2 games. However, in Diablo 3, they continuously push you down a silver path of predictability. It was an illusion that you had any sense of exploration in the first playthrough. After a second and third playthrough, you started to realize that beyond your character's level 60 cap. Like, really, Blizzard? This is not World of Warcraft. You need to stop it. There was no room to expand besides buying gear on the horrid auction house, and Paragon levels weren't even added until later. It was a linear hallway of hack and slash World of Warcraft without the raiding or socializing. Not to mention, they just had to make sure that the auction house killed any other need to interact with anybody. They just had to try and kill the illegal market for real money trading. I'm going to put on the brakes here for a moment and just talk about why and how the designs for the games are so immediately different. And not just in the context of story and setting, but every facet of the game. And it shouldn't take much effort to figure this out. The game was developed by two different groups of people. To put it simply, Activision Blizzard is a whole other beast than Blizzard North. And this is just so apparent through Diablo 1 and 2 versus Diablo 3. David Brevik's original vision versus Jay Wilson's muddied up World of Warcraft vision. This is something that occurs very often in gaming, a begged for brand new sequel to an old champion series where the original creators have moved on. We indeed got that, but it definitely wasn't what we asked for. At Diablo 3's release, we got a game injected with World of Warcraft style mechanics. We got a game that was watered down and streamlined for the casual World of Warcraft masses that unironically abandoned the game within a month and went back to World of Warcraft. And most importantly, we got a game that was incomplete, broken, and experimental upon its release. An absolutely broken auction house, a difficulty system that was unrewarding and unforgiving. Constant online connectivity required, yet we couldn't actually log onto the servers, and in the future, a mixed update bag of broken promises and extreme 180s. Let me set one thing straight about Diablo 2. Its legacy stems from its replayability. This game is akin to Pokemon and how it can thrill somebody to start a brand new game. The amount of questions that immediately erupt in your head, from what class you're going to play, to what tree you're going to specialize in, to what gear you're going to hunt for, to how you're going to maximize your survivability and damage. Each character that you create is unique with only one total skill reset per difficulty completion. The decisions that you make have a mark of permanence that Diablo 3 lacks. Nearly all of Diablo 3's decision making is made obsolete by the pure fact that you can change any ability, rune, or itemization on a moment's notice. Instead of making crucial decisions in skill point placement every level like you did in Diablo 2, you gain unchosen new abilities as you level permanently regardless of what you chose. Another unnecessary, incompatible World of Warcraft philosophy injected into Diablo 3. And these abilities are interchangeable, as you may only have a few of them active at a time. Again, this feeling of customization is merely an illusion, as there's zero room for creativity and only room for optimization. The experimentation is done once you figure out the best set of abilities. Diablo 2's depth comes from the permanent choices that you make in your skill tree, and how they adversely affect each other. Once you max out your character in Diablo 3, you seemingly have access to the best set of abilities and passives. Whatever fits your current gear, you use. That's it. End of story. Not to mention, the tangible value your characters gain from loot ended with the auction house's death. And now I know I've been crucifying the auction house, but at least you could still trade items for gold. The money portion was a blunder, and honestly, the gold wasn't great either. Economies are fickle beasts, and let's be honest, with the amount of people who were playing in the first month, the auction house was flooded, devaluing many items that should have taken much longer to obtain. Gear up, get level 60, buy items with gold, you're done with the game. Did anyone seriously not see this as a problem? There were no uber bosses. For those of you who don't know, these were extensions of the normal bosses throughout the game that dropped even stronger gear that required a lot of time, effort, and teamwork to beat. There were no endgame rifts like today, not that I like them anyways. There were no extra quests. Improper balance in drop rates, plus a massive amount of people on a gigantic auction house is what caused trade to collapse on itself. Blizzard then decided to drive the knife even deeper and completely remove trading altogether, which, ask any D2 fan, is fucking stupid. I seriously cannot imagine what was going through their heads when they made this decision. Did any of them actually play Diablo 2 online at any point in their lives? Did any of them possibly think that this game was supposed to actually use its online features that it so pressed upon the entire base of the game? An MMO where you gain practically nothing from playing with other people you don't know, where you can't trade or interact properly, where you're encouraged to shred through all of the content as quickly as possible through every facet of the game. What the living hell is the point of the game being online then? You see, at this point, I am truly rambling. There are just too many things to talk about in detail. I couldn't even get past the first act of the story without rambling about the actual deep issues that this game has. I literally feel like I could go on forever about the things that are wrong about Diablo 3. But I'm going to stop right now. I'm willing to give more specific examples and tackle each issue head on, but I'm going to need some confirmation that you all actually want me to make those videos. But anyways, this right here, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And I do want to profess that there were moments where I felt like there was some success with Diablo 3. But the mistakes, they just far outweigh any semblance of fun.